My brother called me a thief. He said it's standing in our mother's kitchen, the one with the yellow curtains she never replaced, and he said it quietly, which was worse. He said, "You took what was mine." And I didn't say anything back, because part of me knew he wasn't wrong. My name is Dina, and the house, the one on Crescent Way with the low ceilings and the crack in the back patio that my dad always said he'd fix, that house belonged to both of us. My brother Marcus and me, that's what the will said. Equal shares, that was the plan. My parents died 7 months apart. My mother first, in February, from a stroke that came without any warning at all. My father followed in September. Heart failure, the doctor said, but Marcus and I both knew it was grief. Some people can't survive the person they've loved the longest leaving first. My father was one of those people. We weren't rich. There was no portfolio, no savings account worth talking about. There was the house. A 3-bedroom on a 1/4 acre that they'd paid off 22 years ago and maintained with a kind of quiet pride that I didn't fully appreciate until I was walking through it alone, touching the baseboards they'd painted themselves, finding my mother's handwriting on the inside of a cabinet door where she'd measured my height when I was 9. Marcus lives in Portland, has for 12 years. He has a partner, a good job, a life that doesn't include anything that would fit inside a house in our hometown. I live 40 minutes away. I have 2 kids, a lease that was ending, and a job I just lost 3 weeks after my father's funeral. I want you to understand that timeline. 3 weeks after I buried my father, I had no income and nowhere to go. Marcus and I talked about the house every few weeks through that winter. What to do with it. Whether to sell, whether to rent it, whether one of us should live there. He was never urgent about it. He had room to not be urgent. He'd say things like, "There's no rush, we can figure it out," and I believed he meant that. I think he did mean it. He just didn't know what no rush costs when you're the one paying rent on a salary you no longer have. By March, I had moved into the house with my kids. My daughter Lily was 6. My son Eli was almost 4. I told Marcus I was staying there temporarily while I got back on my feet, and he said that made sense. He said, "Of course, it's your home too." And that sentence, I have thought about that sentence so many times since. Your home too. He meant it kindly. I used it like a key. By May, I had a new job. By July, I had savings again, not much, but something. And somewhere in that stretch of months, living in my parents' house, putting my kids to bed in the room that used to be mine, making coffee in the kitchen with the yellow curtains, I stopped thinking of it as a temporary arrangement. I started thinking of it as home. My home. For the first time in years, I felt settled. And then the offer came. It wasn't something I went looking for. A woman knocked on the door on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because Eli was home sick and I had a conference call in 20 minutes. She said she represented a buyer who was very interested in the property and asked if I'd considered selling. I said no. She left a card. I kept the card. I looked up what houses on that street were selling for. I did the math on what half would mean for me, paying off debt, a down payment somewhere, a cushion I hadn't had in 2 years. I told myself I was just thinking, just running numbers, that I'd call Marcus and we'd figure it out together the way we always said we would. I called a real estate attorney instead. What she told me, and I knew this was information I should share with my brother the moment she said it, was that in our state, when one co-owner wants to sell and the other doesn't agree, a court can force a sale. It's called a partition action. It takes time, it's expensive, but the seller usually wins. She wasn't telling me to do it. She was explaining my options. I sat with that for 3 days. 3 days of knowing something Marcus didn't know. 3 days of thinking about his voice on the phone saying, "No rush." Thinking about how easy that is to say when you're not the one who lost everything in the same season you lost your parents. I didn't file for a partition. I didn't need to. I called Marcus and I told him I wanted to sell. I told him I needed the money, that I couldn't keep maintaining the house alone, that it made sense for both of us. I told him all of that, and most of it was true. What I didn't tell him was that the buyer was already lined up, that I had already spoken to a real estate attorney, that I had already, in my mind, spent my half. Marcus pushed back. He said he wasn't ready. He said the house meant something. I said I understood, and then I told him about the partition option, and I framed it carefully, like I'd just learned it, like I was sharing information rather than wielding it. I watched myself do it. I knew what I was doing. He went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "So you'd actually take me to court over Mom and Dad's house?" And I said, "I don't want to, I really don't want to," which was true. I just wanted him to understand that I could, that I had the leverage and I wasn't afraid to use it. He signed the paperwork 6 weeks later. He didn't come for the closing. He didn't come for any of it. He sent back the keys through an envelope with no note, just the keys in a small plastic bag, and I stood in the kitchen with that bag in my hand and I cried. And even then I wasn't sure if I was crying because I'd hurt him, or because the house was gone, or because I'd gotten exactly what I needed, and it felt nothing like I thought it would. He called me a thief when he came to collect the last of his things, and I stood there and I let him because he wasn't entirely wrong. I didn't steal money. I didn't forge anything. Everything I did was legal. I just used what I knew and I moved faster than he could. And the truth, the part I keep coming back to, is that I would probably do it again. I needed that money. My kids needed stability. I needed to stop drowning. But my brother hasn't returned a call in 9 months. And every time I walk into the house I live in now, the one I bought with my half, I think about my mother's handwriting on the inside of that cabinet door. I didn't photograph it before they painted over it. I forgot to. Or maybe I didn't let myself. I don't know what the right thing would have been. I know what it would have cost me. I know that Marcus had options too. He could have bought me out. He could have sold his share. He could have come back and actually lived in that house if it meant so much to him. I know all of that. I've made that list many times. But I also know that I sat on information for 3 days, and I chose how to use it. And I chose it in a way that left my brother feeling like a stranger in his own family. And no amount of legal correctness makes that feel clean. So I'm asking you, not because I want an answer, but because I genuinely don't know, what would you have done?